Tom Parker drove to Happy Heart's Daycare with the radio playing softly. It was Thursday afternoon, and the sun was starting to set earlier these days. Fall had arrived, bringing cooler air and colorful leaves to their small town of Riverdale. Tom was a single father who had been raising his 5-year-old daughter Lily by himself for the past 2 years, ever since his wife Sarah died in a car accident. Tom worked as an accountant at a local firm. He had arranged his schedule to drop Lily off at daycare each morning at 8 o'clock and pick her up by 5:30 every evening. This routine had become their normal life, and they had both finally started to feel stable again after the loss of Sarah. Happy Hearts Daycare was a well-known place in town. Parents trusted the staff, and children loved going there. The building was bright yellow with a red roof, surrounded by a colorful playground. Tom had researched many daycares before choosing this one. He liked the staff, the safety measures, and how happy Lily seemed there. Miss Nancy, the main teacher in Lily's class, always greeted Tom with a smile when he arrived. She would tell them about Lily's day, what she ate for lunch, what activities she did, and if she made any new friends. Lily usually ran to her father with excitement, holding up drawings or craft projects she had made. Today, though, something was different. When Tom walked through the door, he didn't see Lily playing with the other children. Miss Nancy looked a bit worried as she walked over to him. "Hi, Tom," she said quietly. "Lily has been acting strange since after nap time. She wouldn't join the afternoon activities and has been sitting alone in the reading corner. I tried to ask what was wrong, but she just said she wanted her daddy." Tom frowned. This wasn't like Lily at all. She loved playing with her friends and was usually one of the most active children in class. "Where is she now?" Tom asked, scanning the room. Miss Nancy pointed to the small corner filled with cushions and books. There sat Lily, hugging her favorite stuffed elephant named Ellie. When she saw her father, something unexpected happened. Instead of smiling and running to him like usual, her eyes filled with tears. "Daddy," she cried out, running across the room. She threw her arms around his legs and began to sob. Tom bent down and picked her up, feeling her small body shake with sobs. Other parents were starting to look their way, and Tom felt a mix of worry and embarrassment. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" he asked gently, rubbing her back. But Lily just buried her face in his shoulder and continued crying. "She was fine this morning," Miss Nancy said, looking concerned. "Maybe she's coming down with something. A few kids have had that stomach bug going around." Tom nodded and thanked Miss Nancy while gathering Lily's backpack and lunchbox. "We'll head home. Maybe she just needs some rest." The drive home was unusually quiet. Normally, Lily would talk nonstop about her day, the games she played, and what her friends did. Today, she just stared out the window, holding Ellie tightly. Tom kept looking at her in the rearview mirror, his worry growing with each passing minute. At home, Tom made Lily's favorite dinner, mac and cheese with cut-up hot dogs. He hoped this would cheer her up. While she picked at her food, Tom tried again. "Lilybug, can you tell Daddy what happened today? Did someone make you sad?" Lily looked up at him with her big brown eyes, still watery with tears. She seemed to be thinking hard about something, struggling with whether to speak or not. Finally, she took a deep breath. "Daddy," she whispered, "I need to tell you about the new helper at school." The serious look on her small face made Tom's blood run cold. Tom leaned forward in his chair, trying to keep his face calm. "What new helper, sweetheart? You can tell me anything." Lily pushed her mac and cheese around her plate. She looked down at Ellie the elephant sitting on her lap rather than at her father. "His name is Mr. Bryan," she said in a small voice. "He started working in our class 2 weeks ago." Tom nodded. He remembered seeing a notice about a new teaching assistant joining the daycare staff. The paper said he had good experience working with children. "Miss Nancy says he helps when there are too many kids," Lily continued. "He takes some of us to the other room for special activities." Tom felt a strange feeling in his stomach. "What kind of special activities?" Lily's lip trembled. "Games. But they're not fun games, Daddy." She hugged Ellie tighter. "Today he took me and Jamie and Kyra to the supply room. He said we were going to play a secret game." Tom's hands gripped the edge of the table. He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "What happened in the supply room, Lily?" "Mr. Bryan said we had to be very quiet. He said we couldn't tell anyone about our special games, not even you or Miss Nancy." Lily's voice was barely above a whisper now. "He said it was our secret club, and if we told, we couldn't be in the club anymore. Tom's heart pounded in his chest. Every parent's worst nightmare was unfolding right in front of him. He needed to know more, but he also didn't want to scare Lily or make her think she'd done something wrong. "You're being very brave telling me this, Lily," Tom said gently. "Can you tell me what games you played?" Lily's eyes filled with tears again. "He wanted us to sit on his lap one by one. He gave us candy and said we were special kids. When it was my turn, Lily stopped, looking confused and upset. Tom moved to sit beside her, putting his arm around her small shoulders. "It's okay, baby. You're not in trouble. I'm here." "He touched my hair and my face and said I was pretty like a doll," Lily continued. Then She stopped again, struggling to find words. "He hugged me too tight, and I couldn't breathe good. And his hands." She pointed to her chest and then her legs. "It felt weird and scary, Daddy. I didn't like it." Tom fought to control the rage building inside him. He wanted to drive straight to the daycare right now. He wanted to find this man and make him pay, but Lily needed him calm. "Did this happen to Jamie and Kara too?" he asked. Lily nodded. "And to other kids on other days. Mr. Bryan says we're his special friends." "What happened after that, Lily?" "The bell rang for snack time. Mr. Bryan said we all get extra cookies for being good at the game, but we can't tell why we got them." Lily looked up at her father, her eyes serious. "But I didn't want the cookie, Daddy. I felt sick in my tummy. And I know we're not supposed to keep secrets from you. Mommy always said that before she went to heaven." Tom pulled Lily into a tight hug, his eyes burning with tears. Sarah had indeed taught Lily that important rule: there should never be secrets from parents, especially if an adult asks you to keep one. "You did exactly the right thing telling me, Lily. I'm so proud of you," Tom said, his voice shaky. "You are such a brave girl." Lily looked up at him. "Am I in trouble? Mr. Bryan said we'd get in big trouble if we told." "No, sweetheart. You're not in any trouble at all," Tom said firmly. "But Mr. Bryan is. He should never have played those games or asked you to keep secrets." As Lily leaned against him, Tom's mind raced. He needed to call the police. He needed to contact the daycare owner. He needed to talk to the parents of Jamie and Kira. But most of all, he needed to protect his daughter and make sure nothing like this ever happened to her or any other child again. The clock on the wall ticked loudly as Tom held his daughter, the mac and cheese growing cold on their plates. After Lily finally fell asleep, Tom sat alone in his kitchen. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. It was almost midnight, but sleep was the last thing on his mind. His hand shook as he poured himself a cup of coffee. Tom stared at his phone on the table. He had already made 2 important calls. The first was to the police, who told him to bring Lily to the station tomorrow to make a formal report. The second call was harder. He had phoned his sister Kate, who lived an hour away and worked as a child therapist. "You need to document everything, Tom," Kate had told him. "Write down exactly what Lily said, word for word, while it's still fresh in your mind. Don't ask her leading questions. Just let her tell you in her own words." Tom opened a notebook and started writing. He tried to remember every detail of Lily's story. As he wrote, tears dripped onto the paper, smudging his words. His mind was spinning with questions and doubts. Was he overreacting? Could this all be a misunderstanding? Lily was only 5. Maybe she had confused an innocent action for something inappropriate. But deep down, Tom knew his daughter. She wasn't a child who made up stories or confused easily. The fear in her eyes had been real. He thought about the other parents. Did they know? Were their children also victims? He thought of Jamie and Kira, the children Lily mentioned. Should he call their parents tonight? What if he was wrong and caused panic for nothing? Tom walked to Lily's room and quietly opened the door. She was sleeping peacefully, Ellie the elephant clutched in her arms. Her small nightlight cast a soft glow across her face. Looking at her, so innocent and trusting, Tom felt a surge of protective rage wash over him. How dare anyone hurt his child? How dare they betray her trust and make her afraid? Back in the kitchen, Tom made another decision. He picked up his phone and called the owner of Happy Hearts Daycare, Mrs. Peterson. Despite the late hour, she answered on the 3rd ring. "Tom, is everything okay?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep. "No, Mrs. Peterson, everything is not okay," Tom said, trying to keep his voice steady. I need to speak with you about a serious matter concerning one of your employees, Mr. Bryan. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. What's happened? She finally asked. Tom took a deep breath and told her what Lily had shared. As he spoke, he could hear Mrs. Peterson's breathing change. She sounded shocked. I don't know what to say, she stammered when he finished. Brian Miller has only been with us for 3 weeks. His background check was clear. There were no red flags in his references. Well, something was missed, Tom said firmly. I've already called the police. They want to speak with you tomorrow. I suggest you check your security cameras, especially around the supply room. Of course, Mrs. Peterson said quickly. I'll go to the daycare right now and secure the footage. And Tom, I'm so sorry, so very sorry. After hanging up, Tom sat back in his chair, feeling mentally exhausted. His emotions swung wildly between anger, fear, and doubt. Had he done enough? Should he have taken Lily to the hospital tonight? Would the police take this seriously? Tom opened his laptop and began searching for information about child abuse cases and how they were handled. He needed to be prepared. He needed to protect Lily through what was coming. As the night grew deeper, Tom made plans. Lily would not return to Happy Hearts. He would take time off work to stay with her. They would find a good therapist. They would get through this together. The kitchen clock showed 3:15 a.m. when Tom finally closed his laptop. He was emotionally drained but resolute. Tomorrow would be difficult, but for Lily's sake, he would be strong. He would make sure justice was served. Tom walked back to Lily's room and gently sat on the edge of her bed. Watching her sleep, he made a silent promise. He couldn't shield her from everything in the world, but he would fight with everything he had to keep her safe and help her heal. I'm here, baby girl, he whispered. Daddy's here, and I'm not going anywhere. Tom woke up early the next morning after barely sleeping. He had dozed off in the chair next to Lily's bed, not wanting to leave her alone. His neck hurt, and his eyes were heavy, but there was no time to rest. Today would be a day of action. When Lily opened her eyes, Tom was already sitting beside her with a gentle smile. Good morning, sweetheart, he said softly. How did you sleep? Lily hugged Ellie the elephant tighter. I had a bad dream about Mr. Bryan, Daddy. Tom's heart ached, but he kept his voice steady. I'm sorry about that, Lilybug. But guess what? You're not going to daycare today. We have some special things to do instead. Lily's eyes widened. Am I sick? No, honey. But remember what you told me yesterday about Mr. Bryan and the games. When Lily nodded, Tom continued, Well, we need to tell some people about that. Some nice people who help keep children safe. Tom helped Lily get dressed in her favorite purple outfit. He made pancakes shaped like elephants for breakfast, trying to keep things as normal as possible. While they ate, he explained in simple terms what would happen that day. We're going to visit some police officers, Tom said. They're very nice, and they just want to hear your story. All you have to do is tell the truth, just like you told me. Lily looked worried. Will Mr. Bryan be there? No, sweetie. Just you and me and the nice officers. After breakfast, Tom packed Lily's backpack with Ellie, some coloring books, and snacks. Before leaving, he received a call from Mrs. Peterson. Tom, I checked the security footage, she said, her voice tight. The cameras don't cover the supply room, but they show Bryan taking small groups of children there several times in the past 2 weeks. I've called an emergency meeting with all staff. We're closing the daycare today. Have you spoken to the police? Tom asked. Yes, they're sending officers to the daycare this morning. They'd also want to speak with all the parents. Tom took a deep breath. I'm taking Lily to the police station now. Have you contacted Jamie and Kira's parents? I'm calling them right after you, Mrs. Peterson assured him. Tom, I feel terrible about this. I never thought. We'll talk later, Tom said firmly. Right now, the children come first. The police station was not what Tom expected. Instead of taking them to a cold interview room, Officer Martinez, a kind-faced woman in uniform, led them to a colorful room with toys and comfortable chairs. Hi, Lily, Officer Martinez said, kneeling to the child's level. My name is Officer Rosa. That's a beautiful elephant you have. Lily clutched Ellie but gave a small smile. Her name is Ellie. She keeps me safe. That's wonderful. Would Ellie like to sit with us while we talk? A specialist named Ms. Patel joined them. She explained that she worked with children who had difficult experiences. Her gentle manner put both Tom and Lily at ease. "Lily, can you tell us about Mr. Bryan at your daycare?" Miss Patel asked. Tom watched with a mix of pride and heartbreak as his daughter bravely told her story. Miss Patel asked questions carefully, never pushing, always patient. Officer Martinez took notes, her face professional but kind. When Lily finished talking, Miss Patel praised her courage. "You did such a good job telling us what happened, Lily. You're helping other children stay safe." While Lily colored with Officer Martinez, Miss Patel took Tom aside. "We're taking this very seriously," she said quietly. "Two other families have already come in this morning with similar reports. The department has sent officers to Brian Miller's home with a search warrant." Tom felt his knees weaken with relief. They believed Lily. They were taking action. "What happens next?" he asked. "We'll need to schedule a more detailed interview with a child psychologist," Ms. Patel explained. "And I would recommend starting therapy for Lily soon. I can give you some referrals." Tom nodded, watching his daughter. Despite everything, she was smiling as she showed Officer Martinez her drawing. Children were so resilient, he thought. With the right support, Lily would get through this. And he would be there every step of the way. The news spread through Riverdale like wildfire. By the end of the day, every parent with a child at Happy Hearts Daycare had heard about Brian Miller. Some refused to believe it. Others panicked. Most were simply shocked that such a thing could happen in their small, tight-knit community. Tom sat in the crowded school gym where an emergency meeting had been called. Lily was in a separate room with other children, supervised by counselors who had volunteered to help. The murmur of anxious parents filled the large space. Mrs. Peterson stood at the front, her face drawn with stress and lack of sleep. Next to her were Officer Martinez, the police chief, and a child psychologist from the county office. Tom recognized several other parents he knew from daycare drop-offs, all looking as worried and tired as he felt. "We called this meeting to address the serious allegations that have come to light," Mrs. Peterson began, her voice shaking slightly. "As you know, Brian Miller has been arrested and is being held pending charges." The police chief stepped forward. "So far, we have statements from 7 children," he said plainly. "The investigation is ongoing. We believe there may be more victims." A woman in the back row started crying. Another parent shouted, "How could this happen? Where were the teachers?" Tom understood their anger. He had felt it too, that burning question of how no one had noticed anything wrong. But after speaking with Ms. Nancy, he also understood how cleverly Miller had operated, always finding moments when staff were busy with other children. The child psychologist, Dr. Walker, spoke next. "I know you're all concerned about your children. The most important thing right now is to create a safe space for them to talk. Don't ask leading questions. Listen carefully to what they say and what they don't say." She went on to explain signs of trauma to watch for and how parents should respond. Tom took careful notes, though he had already learned much of this from his sister Kate, who had driven up to stay with them for a few days. After the formal presentation, parents broke into smaller groups. Tom found himself surrounded by the parents of Lily's classmates. "Tom, we heard Lily was the first to speak up," said Jamie's father, reaching out to shake his hand. "We owe your daughter our thanks. Jamie might never have told us if the police hadn't come to talk with him." "How is Lily doing?" asked Kyra's mother, her eyes red from crying. Tom sighed. "She has nightmares. She's afraid to go to new places, but she's also incredibly brave. The therapist says she's processing things as well as can be expected." As they talked, Tom realized something important was happening. These parents, once just familiar faces at pickup time, were becoming a support network. They exchanged phone numbers and made plans to meet regularly. They talked about therapy options and shared resources. Later that evening, as Tom was leaving with Lily, Mrs. Peterson approached him. "The board wants to know if you'll join a parent committee," she said quietly. "We're rebuilding our safety protocols from the ground up. We need parents we can trust to help us get it right." Tom hesitated. Part of him wanted nothing more to do with Happy Hearts, but another part knew that running away wouldn't help anyone. "I'll think about it," he promised. On the drive home, Tom glanced at Lily in the rearview mirror. She was looking out the window, hugging Ellie as always. There was something different in her face. a small hint of the confident, happy child she had been before all this happened. "Daddy," she said suddenly, "Kara's mom said we can have a play date at their house on Saturday. Can we go?" Tom felt a lump in his throat. This was the first time since the incident that Lily had wanted to go anywhere other than home. "Of course we can, Lilybug," he said, his voice thick with emotion. As they pulled into their driveway, Tom realized that healing wouldn't come all at once. It would be many small steps forward, with probably some steps back too. But they weren't walking this path alone anymore. A circle of support had formed around them, around all the affected families. And somehow, that made the path ahead seem a little less dark. 3 weeks after Brian Miller's arrest, Tom sat on an uncomfortable wooden bench outside the courtroom. The hallway was quiet except for the occasional click of shoes on the polished floor. He checked his watch again. Lily was at his sister Kate's house, probably painting or playing with her cousins. He had promised to bring her favorite ice cream when he returned. The door to the district attorney's office opened, and Ms. Reeves stepped out. She was a serious woman with kind eyes who had been assigned to prosecute the case. "Thank you for coming in today, Mr. Parker," she said, gesturing him inside. "I know this isn't easy." Tom followed her into a small meeting room where 2 other people waited. One was Detective Wilson, who had been investigating the case. The other was a woman Tom hadn't met before. "This is Mrs. Ortiz," Ms. Reeves explained. "She's a victim advocate who works with children involved in court cases." Mrs. Ortiz smiled warmly. "I'll be helping prepare Lily if she needs to talk to the judge." Tom's heart sank. "So she will have to testify. I was hoping." Detective Wilson shook his head. "We don't know yet. The evidence we found on Miller's computer might be enough, but we need to be prepared either way." For the next hour, they explained the legal process to Tom. Brian Miller was facing multiple charges of child abuse. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for next month. If the case went to trial, it could take 6 months or more to resolve. "What about the other families?" Tom asked. "How are they handling this?" "Most are cooperating," Detective Wilson said. "But it's hard. 2 families have already moved away from Riverdale. They wanted a fresh start." Tom understood that feeling. He had considered it too, taking Lily far away from the memories. But running wouldn't solve anything. The fear would follow them. Mrs. Ortiz leaned forward. "Mr. Parker, if Lily does need to speak to the judge, it won't be in open court. She would be in a separate room with me, and only the judge would see her on a closed video link. We do everything we can to protect the children." Tom nodded, grateful for this small mercy. "What should I tell her about all this?" "Be honest, but simple," Mrs. Ortiz advised. "Children understand more than we think. Tell her that Mr. Bryan did wrong things, and now he has to explain to a judge why he did them. The judge will decide how he should be punished." After the meeting, Tom walked to his car feeling drained. The legal system moved so slowly. Meanwhile, life had to go on. He had returned to work part-time. Lily was seeing a therapist twice a week. They were finding a new normal, but shadows of what happened still followed them. His phone rang as he started the car. It was Jamie's father, Mark. "Just checking in," Mark said. "How did the meeting go?" Tom filled him in as he drove. The parents' support group had become his lifeline in recent weeks. They understood what he was going through in a way no one else could. "We're having a cookout this weekend," Mark said. "All the families are coming. The kids can play, and the adults can talk. No pressure to discuss the case unless you want to." "We'll be there," Tom promised. When he arrived at Kate's house, Lily ran to greet him. Her smile wasn't as bright as before everything happened, but it was genuine. The therapist had explained that healing wasn't linear. There would be good days and hard days. "Daddy, Aunt Kate helped me make a bracelet for you." Lily held up a colorful string of beads. Tom knelt down and let her put it on his wrist. "It's beautiful, Lilybug. I'll wear it every day." As he hugged her, Tom felt both heartbreak and hope. The legal process would be long and difficult. There would be more meetings, more decisions, more painful conversations. But watching Lily now, playing with her cousins, he could see glimpses of healing beginning to take root. The path to justice was a marathon, not a sprint. But for Lily's sake, and for all the children affected, Tom would see it through to the end. 6 months had passed since that terrible day when Lily had run crying to her father at Happy Hearts Daycare. The leaves that had been falling then were now growing back on the trees, bringing new life to Riverdale. Spring had arrived, and with it came small signs of healing for Tom and Lily Parker. Tom sat on a park bench, watching Lily play on the swings with Jamie and Kira. The three children had formed a special bond that only those who share difficult experiences can understand. They didn't talk about what had happened with Mr. Bryan anymore, at least not during playtime. Instead, they focused on being children again, laughing, running, and enjoying the simple pleasure of a sunny afternoon. "She's doing better," said a voice beside him. Tom looked up to see Dr. Simmons, Lily's therapist, who had brought her own children to the park that day. Tom nodded. "The nightmares have almost stopped. She's sleeping through most nights now." Dr. Simmons smiled as she watched Lily push Jamie on the swing. "She's showing nurturing behavior. That's a good sign. Children who experience trauma often struggle with trust, but Lily is rebuilding her ability to connect with others." The trial of Brian Miller was still ongoing. The prosecutor had built a strong case, and Miller remained in jail awaiting the final verdict. Tom had testified last month, describing the changes he had seen in his daughter and the devastating impact Miller's actions had on their family. Lily hadn't needed to appear in court after all. The evidence from other sources had been enough. Happy Hearts Daycare had closed permanently. Mrs. Peterson had been unable to overcome the damage to its reputation, despite her efforts to cooperate with authorities. A new daycare center had opened across town with state-of-the-art security systems and strict hiring protocols. Tom had helped develop some of those protocols as part of a parent advisory board. "Daddy, watch me," Lily called, humping her legs to swing higher. "I see you, Lilybug," Tom called back, waving. "You're flying so high." As he watched his daughter play, Tom reflected on their journey. The first few weeks after Lily's revelation had been the hardest. She had been clingy and fearful, refusing to let Tom out of her sight. She would wake up screaming from nightmares. Simple tasks like getting dressed or taking a bath had become battles because of her new fear of being touched. Tom had taken a month off work to be with her full time. His boss had been understanding, especially after the story made local news. The community had rallied around all the affected families, bringing meals, offering childcare, and creating a support fund to help with therapy costs. Lily's healing had come in small steps. The first time she laughed again, really laughed, had been at a silly face Tom made during dinner, about 3 weeks after everything happened. The first time she agreed to a play date had been 2 months later. The first night she slept without nightmares had been celebrated with pancakes for breakfast. "Mr. Parker," Dr. Simmons said, interrupting his thoughts, "I wanted to let you know that I think we can reduce Lily's therapy to once a week now, instead of twice." Tom's eyes widened. "Really? That's wonderful news." "She still has work to do," the therapist cautioned. "This kind of trauma doesn't disappear. But she's developing healthy coping skills. And a lot of that is because of you. You've created a safe space for her to heal." Tom felt his eyes grow damp. "I'm just doing what any parent would do." "Not every child is so lucky," Dr. Simmons said quietly. "The way you've handled this, being patient, getting her help, believing her from the very beginning, that makes all the difference." Lily ran over to them, her cheeks flushed and her eyes bright. "Daddy, can we get ice cream? Jamie's dad said they're going to the ice cream shop." Tom smiled and stood up. "Ice cream sounds perfect." As they walked hand in hand toward the ice cream shop, joining the other families, Tom felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. They weren't at the end of their journey yet. The road to complete healing would be long. But for the first time in months, the future looked bright again. Spring had returned to their lives, and with it, hope was blooming once more. 1 year had passed since the day Lily ran crying to her father at Happy Hearts Daycare. The calendar on the Parker kitchen wall showed August 15th, circled in red marker. It was a special day, Lily's first day of kindergarten. Tom stood in the doorway of Lily's bedroom, watching as his daughter carefully picked out her clothes. She had laid out 3 outfits on her bed, a blue dress with butterflies, a red t-shirt with jeans, and a yellow sundress. "Which one looks most like a big girl, Daddy?" Lily asked, looking up at him with serious eyes. Tom smiled. "They all look like perfect big girl outfits to me. Which one do you like best?" Lily thought for a moment, then pointed to the yellow dress. "This one, it's sunny like today." As Tom helped Lily get ready, he marveled at how much had changed in a year. The scared, traumatized little girl who had clung to him for months was now excited about starting school. She still carried Ellie the elephant in her backpack for comfort, but she no longer needed the stuffed animal to be with her every minute of the day. The trial of Brian Miller had ended 3 months ago. He had been found guilty on all charges and sentenced to 20 years in prison with no possibility of early release. The judge had been especially harsh because of the number of children involved and Miller's position of trust. When Tom told Lily that Mr. Bryan was going to jail for a very long time, she had simply nodded and said, "Good. Now he can't hurt any more kids." Then she had gone back to coloring her picture. Children had their own way of processing justice. "Are you ready for breakfast, Lilybug?" Tom asked, helping her put on her shoes. In the kitchen, Tom made Lily's favorite pancakes shaped like animals. As they ate, he went over the day's plan one more time. "Remember, Mrs. Johnson will be your teacher. We met her last week at the open house, remember? And Jamie and Kira will be in your class too." Lily nodded, her mouth full of pancake. When she swallowed, she said, "And you'll pick me up after school?" "Every day," Tom promised. "I'll be waiting right outside your classroom." The doorbell rang. It was Mark, Jamie's father, and Laura, Kara's mother. They had arranged to walk their children to school together on the first day. The three families had remained close, bound by shared experience and recovery. "Look at you, Miss Lily," Laura exclaimed, "so grown up in your yellow dress." The children greeted each other excitedly, talking about their new lunchboxes and backpacks. The adults exchanged knowing looks, a mix of pride and lingering concern. They had all walked a difficult path together. The elementary school was only 6 blocks away. As they walked, Tom thought about how this moment might never have happened if Lily hadn't been brave enough to tell them what was wrong that day at daycare. The thought still made his heart ache. At the school entrance, many parents were taking pictures of their children. Tom knelt down in front of Lily. "Are you ready, sweetheart?" Lily looked at the big school building, then back at her father. For a moment, Tom saw a flicker of fear in her eyes, but then she straightened her shoulders. "I'm ready, Daddy. I'm a big girl now." Tom took a deep breath. "You sure are, and I'm so proud of you, Lily, so very proud." He hugged her tight, then watched as she joined hands with Jamie and Kira. The three children walked together toward their new classroom, turning back once to wave. Mark put a hand on Tom's shoulder. "They're going to be okay, you know." Tom nodded, wiping a tear from his eye. "I know." As they walked away from the school, Laura said, "The parent meeting is tonight, about the new safety programs for all county schools." "I'll be there," Tom said. After what happened, he had become an advocate for child safety education in schools. The programs he helped develop were now being adopted throughout the district. Later that afternoon, Tom waited outside Lily's classroom, just as he had promised. When the door opened and children poured out, he spotted Lily immediately. Her face lit up when she saw him. "Daddy, school is amazing," she shouted, running to him with a drawing in her hand. "I made this for you." Tom looked at the colorful picture. It showed 4 figures, Lily, Tom, and 2 others. "That's me and you and Mommy in heaven," Lily explained, pointing. "And that's me when I grow up. I'm going to be a helper for kids." Tom hugged his daughter close, his heart full. They had survived the darkest of times. They had healed. And now, finally, they were truly moving forward.